Hey everybody, my name is Mike Montgomery, and today I'd like to show you how I built this metal-based coffee table without any welding. That's right, I'm gonna show you how. So let's get started on Modern Builds. Everybody loves a good metal coffee table base, but not everyone knows how to weld, can afford it, or has a shop that's really even equipped to do it. So today I'm gonna be showing you how to make a metal coffee table base with no welding. Not too long back, I was in Home Depot and I saw this square aluminum tubing. Aluminum is great because you can cut it with the same saws that you use to cut wood. This metal is way softer than the metal in the blade for your saw, so it cuts pretty well. I also saw that they sell these square wooden dowels that fit borderline perfectly into this aluminum tubing. So I put two and two together and I realized that with the strength of the wood inside the tube, it no longer wants to bend, and now, because I have the wood inside of the tube, I have something that I can screw into and make strong joints. As of now, I haven't finished the table yet, so I'm not 100% sure if this is gonna work, but I think it will. So let's find out on Modern Builds. Wait, I already did the intro, so let's just get started. Roll the tape.
So we're gonna start this project with the base. Essentially, it's two square frame legs that are attached with 4 stretchers. So to begin, I started by marking out all of my pieces so that I could cut them out on the miter saw. This is what's so great about aluminum is you don't need special tools, just like I mentioned. It's really easy, just make sure you cut slower than you normally would with wood. And while I was at it, I went ahead and cut all of my 5/8 inch square dowels to length too. There's a pretty good chance you could probably just friction fit these dowels into the tubes. At least for me, they were a really snug fit, but I went the extra mile and I mixed up some 2-part epoxy that I used to hold everything in place. If I were to do this project again, I would make the dowels run the full length of the tube. That way it would just be a little bit stronger. I did that on the bottom cross section because the stretchers are in the center of the tube, but like I said, I would do it on all of them. On the bottom of the leg pieces, I made little wooden feet by letting the pegs extend an inch from the bottom edge of the tube. I think it just adds a little bit of a touch that makes everything look unique. You could totally use a normal power drill for this, but I've got a drill press. So I set up a quick fence and stop block, that way I could make really quick, repeatable holes that were in the right position. I used a countersink so that I would be able to recess the screw heads flush with the rest of the pipe's surface. That way, when I came back to fill and sand everything down, it would be easier to make smooth. This is the same jig that I used on my picture frame making video. Essentially, it's 2 pieces of wood that are set at a 90-degree angle. Then I could wedge my pieces in place with this scrap piece of plywood so that I knew I was screwing everything in at 90 degrees square. With both my frames ready, I moved back to the drill press so that I could drill the holes for my top and bottom stretchers. Now I know the top stretchers probably don't have the strongest joint, and that's because I have 2 screws almost intersecting. I made sure to stagger them, that way they didn't hit each other, but still, if I made all the stretchers in the same way I did the bottom ones, this whole thing probably would have been a little bit stronger. If I were building this project again though, I would still do it the same way, just because I think it looks better. And if something doesn't look good, then who cares how strong it is, right? I'm not totally sure if this will work, but I'm gonna give plain old wood filler a try. I applied it to all the seams to help smooth things out, as well as over the screw heads. Then I sanded everything with 120 grit and then 220 grit to help smooth everything out. I'm epoxying in these really small angle brackets, that way I have something to attach the top to once it's finished. I also came back and used masking tape to cover up all of the wooden pegs at the bottom of the frame. That way, I could spray paint it. Sorry for the crappy shot here, but I don't want to have to wait until tomorrow on this.
I'd like to take a second and thank this video's sponsor, Care Of. Care Of delivers personalized daily vitamin and supplement packs to help users maintain better personal health. Users start with taking a short quiz with questions about your individual health and goals. Then, Care Of suggests the best combinations of vitamins and supplements, all sourced responsibly, and packs that are customized with honest, transparent information. Personally, I really enjoy the convenience of Care Of. Each morning I've got a brand new supplement pack, each with a quote of the day or question of the day that's ready to go, so I'm not wasting any time. Plus, for someone like me that's pretty new to the whole supplement world, taking the quiz and getting those suggestions along with all the additional information allows me to make a lot more educated decision on what I take. So if you're interested in learning more about Care of and taking the quiz for yourself, make sure and follow the link down in the description,
www.takecareof.com,
and use the code ModernBuilds to get 25% off your first purchase. Thanks!
The tabletop is made out of a bunch of 1x4s, I think 10 of them. Now this is an optional step, but I ran them all through the planer to get rid of any cupping, that way I had a good square glue surface. Then I cut them all to 46-inch long pieces, and I ran those pieces through the table saw. I basically just cut them in half. This doesn't have to be perfect because I'm running all these pieces back through the thickness planer once they're done being glued up. And speaking of gluing up, I glued it up in 2 separate halves, that way they would fit in the planer, and it would just make it overall a more manageable glue up. After my 2 halves had been cleaned up, I glued them together. Now you're gonna have a glue seam in the middle where all that glue squeezes out, so I used a belt sander to clean it up. And if you don't have a thickness planer at all, this is what you would have to do to clean up both of your halves prior to gluing them up too. I sanded with 80, 150, then 220 grit sandpaper, then I used my circular saw to square up my edges. I made 1 square reference surface, then I put my frame on there, marked the line that I needed to cut for the second side, set up that straight edge, and cut it square. I applied 3 coats of Minwax polyacrylic. This is in matte finish. I'm really big on low gloss finishes, and this one is great. You remember those ankle brackets? Well, for some reason, they weren't as strong as I was expecting, so I came back with some screws to reinforce them, and it worked great. Then all I had to do was flip my tabletop over, center my base, pre-drill some holes, and screw it in. Once my base was secure, the table was done. I'm super pumped with how this came out. This was a huge experiment, and to have it go successfully is huge. The base looks great, and I know that's really the meat of the video, but I'm also really happy with how the top came out. The 1x4s have a really white wood, which really came out great with that polyacrylic.
So at this point in the video, I have to imagine quite a few of you are wondering, is this actually strong enough to build myself? Well, it does have a little bit of wobble. I mean, I'm pushing pretty hard, but it does wobble a little bit. But I think the real test is to stand on it. And it's holding up. I mean, I'm not gonna jump on, well, maybe I'll jump on it. Just a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna do a tiny jump. 1, 2, 3. Wow. So there you go. It's not the strongest table in the world, but it's definitely not gonna break the first time you breathe on it. So I guess here comes the question, do I actually recommend doing this? And the answer is yes and no. And here's why. If you are a DIYer that's not interested in spending the time and money into learning how to weld, or if it's just something that you're not set up for, and you're gonna be building this piece for yourself, for your home, yes, I do recommend it. If you are a furniture builder that makes commissions for other people, I do not recommend this. Personally, I'm careful with my furniture. I don't go crazy with it, but I don't know how other people treat their furniture, and I wouldn't be comfortable selling someone something that might break. If you make commission pieces, learn how to weld, build it out of steel. It'll be stronger, probably a little bit quicker even, and you know it'll pretty much never break. But like I said, building this for myself, if anything ever breaks, I can fix it myself. And in all reality, I will probably have another coffee table design that I want to build by the time this will ever break. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. It was a ton of fun to do an experiment like this, to have an idea, to try it out, and to have it work successfully was really awesome, so it's something I want to do more. Like I mentioned, this was 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch tube, and I think Home Depot sells up to 1x1 tubing, but I think it would be really cool to go to a local metal supplier and get something with an inside diameter of 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. That way I can get plain old 2x4s, cut those into squares, and make a dining table base out of it now that I know it's strong enough. Plus, if I have that much meat on the inside of the tube, I can use a lot bigger screws. Heck, I could probably even use some serious lag bolts in there and hold everything together. Now, you've already seen it, but I made a 3D model of this in SketchUp. That way, if you plan on building this project for yourself, you can download that, edit it, make the dimensions fit your space, or you can just download it to see the dimensions of everything I made too. This was my first real legit model, and it's something that I want to do for every project going into 2018. That way I can make better written articles to help you guys build things easier. Now, obviously that takes up quite a bit of time to make these models, and I don't necessarily want to make you guys pay for them because that's the whole idea, is to not put anything behind a paywall on this channel. But I've considered making a Patreon page or starting a second channel that's Patreon funded so that I can sort of build a community of people that I know are really interested in what I'm doing. Plus it can kind of justify all the time that I'm spending on all that extra stuff. Now this definitely isn't a Patreon launch announcement or anything. It's more just me throwing out feelers to see what you guys think about it. I'll put a card in the top corner somewhere asking if you're interested in Patreon. If you're interested in that, that's awesome. But if you're not, that's totally fine. I don't expect anyone to pay me for anything I'm doing. Right now I have sponsors like Care of, and that's how I'm able to do this. But I also have interest in doing things that are a little bit more in left field or a little bit more experimental than this, that aren't necessarily sponsor friendly because I don't know how they'll perform. So like I mentioned, if I start a second channel, that's a cool place where I can put those types of videos. And if it's Patreon funded, then I don't have to worry about view numbers or the whole YouTube algorithm. So if you don't mind taking that poll, letting me know, one, if you're interested. If not, that's totally fine. And if you are interested, I'm curious how much the average person would be interested in contributing. I want to set up some cool reward tiers, so having a baseline for all that'll help me out. Not to mention, if you have any ideas for what some cool rewards might be, whether it's exclusive merch or having one-on-one Skype kind of conversations with me to help with design or some of your specific projects, let me know, because the whole idea is I want it to be valuable for you just as much as it is for me. Anyways, that's something for down the line. We can talk about that later. In the meantime, if you have any questions about this project, you can always hit me up in the comments or with a DM on Instagram. That's always a quick way to get a hold of me. Plus, it keeps track of everything we've talked about so I remember who you are and what we've talked about before. If you're new to my channel, I'd really welcome you to subscribe. That way you can stay updated every time I post a new project video. And speaking of project videos, like this one, I'll have a couple links pop up on the screen here if you want to watch another one of my videos. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks to Care of for sponsoring this video. And until next week, this has been Modern Builds. Bye everybody.